To add a bit more life to our menu scene, we want to add a small animation to our play label. And to do so, I will, right below the add labels method, create a new method called animate, which will get a parameter label of type skLabelNode. Inside of this method, I want to test two different animations for our label. The first one would be to slowly fade out and fade in our label repeatedly to kind of get a flashing animation. To achieve this, I will begin with a constant called fadeOut, which will be an skAction.fadeOut. And for the duration parameter, I will say 0.5, so half a second. I will then add a constant called fadeIn as an skAction.fadeIn with the same duration of 0.5. This obviously needs to say fade out, not fade in, I'm sorry. I can then combine these two actions to run simultaneously or after one another. In this case, I will of course choose the second option by defining a constant called sequence as an skAction.sequence, and I can already see that I will have to pass an array of skActions to this method. And I will of course pass fade out and fade in as the two actions here. Finally, I want to run this sequence action on the label that gets passed to this method indefinitely. So I will write label.runAction and then pass an skAction.repeatForever, which will then repeat my sequence action forever. What this does is just run the sequence action infinitely on the label node that we pass to this method. Like I said, we want to run this on our play label, and therefore in the add labels method, after we've added the play label as a child, I'll need to call animate with the play label, and that should already do the trick. So let's run the app and take a look. As soon as the app starts, we can now see that our label is flashing on the menu screen. As I said, this doesn't change any functionality of our game, but it's often a good idea to spend some time on visual appearance of our apps, especially when developing games, so that they not only work well, but also look good. With this action and the action we'll define now, I just want to give you some ideas how you can use really simple code to achieve these kind of effects. So let's stop this, and I'll show you another way by not fading our label, but scaling it up and down, which will result in a kind of pulsing motion of the label. I'll define a constant called scale up, which will be an skAction.scale2, and for scaling up our node, I will pass 1.1 to make it slightly bigger. For the duration, I will again say 0.5, and I will then define a constant called scale down as a skAction.scale2, where I will reset the scale to 1.0, so to return to our original scale. Again, with the duration 0.5. I can now just replace the fade out and fade in actions in these sequences, so that now this new action is used for our label animation. I'll just comment the two fade actions at the top here to avoid warnings, and then run the app again. And as it starts, we can now see a slightly different animation of our label, which also looks pretty good and draws the user's attention to our tap to play call to action. This will be it for our animation with labels. And you can of course use animations on other nodes as well, maybe images, our logo for example. I will stop the app, and now we'll learn how to add a little sound effect to our game. In your resource folder, you'll find an audio file called Bling, which I will just drag over in my project here. If we listen to it really quickly, it's just a short little coin sound, which we can use in our game whenever we score. To do that, I would go into my game scene and scroll down to my didBeginContact method, where this happens. So right where we increment our score, I want to add a new action that I can run directly on my scene. So I could just call run and then define an skaction.placeSound file named. For the name of my sound file, I'll just say bling. Wait for completion can be false here. In our case, this doesn't really change anything, but we still need to provide a value for it. Now, this was really easy, and just with one line of code, we added sound to our app, hopefully. So let's run the app and see if it actually works. We start in our menu with our nifty little animations, and if I then start a game, we can hear our new sound every time we collect a ball. Now, for the first time, this has been a bit laggy in our simulator, but I can assure you that on a real device that this won't be a problem. Just like we've implemented this, we could of course add more sounds to our game, like a game over sound or a sound for tapping. But since you now know how to do this, it would be a great opportunity to practice this if you do it on your own. This concludes our Color Switch app, and I would really encourage you to take a closer look at all these concepts that we've learned and that we've used to build our game, and see if you can come up with any creative ways of using those concepts to create an entirely new game. If you do create anything, feel free to share it with us and the other students in a discussion.